Okay, out of curiosity, can I have everybody close your eyes? Okay? Now, I want you to raise your hand honestly. Again, everyone's eyes are closed, nobody can see. Raise your hand if you have ever thought about getting married someday. Okay? All right. Put your hands down. Raise your hand if you've ever thought about, and this is just for the girls, if you've ever thought about being a religious sister, you've thought about being a nun someday. And I'm not saying that you're going to, just that you've ever thought about it. Show of hands. Okay, put those down. And then for our boys, have you ever thought, and again, you're not signing up, I'm not writing your names down, but have you ever thought about being a priest? Show your hands. Okay, awesome. All right, you can put those down. You can open your eyes up again. Awesome. So yes, this week, that was really cool. Thank you for doing that. Very enlightening and I think hopefully encouraging. This week we celebrate Vocation Awareness Week. And I think it's one of those weeks that it's good to celebrate because a lot of times we don't think about these things, right? We're so engrossed in our daily life and what's happening in the here and now, especially at your age, that thinking that far in the future may not come upon our minds very often. But I think it's just good every once in a while just to reflect on what is possible. What is God calling us to? With that in mind, I do want to highlight today we celebrate St. Charles Borromeo. Now, does anybody know what he's the patron saint of? St. Charles Borromeo? Any guesses? He actually is a patron saint of a lot of things. There's one in particular I'm looking for, but he's the patron saint of Monterey, California, of all places. He's the patron saint of tummy aches. Don't know why. I don't know if he had intestinal things going on, but so if you have a stomach ache, I guess St. Charles Borromeo is one you can call upon. He is also, and probably most well known for, being a patron saint of seminarians. What is a seminarian? Anybody know what a seminarian? Yes, so someone who's studying to be a priest. So he's the patron saint. And the reason for that is 500 years ago, give or take, in Europe, there was what was called the Protestant Reformation, right? So this is when Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses onto a cathedral door and broke away from the Catholic Church, decided to go his own way, form the Church of Lutheranism, and then, the Protestant churches were spreading all throughout Europe. Now, you can only imagine, for the Catholic Church, this was a wake-up call, right? When you have churches in various nations that are leaving the Catholic Church to form their own churches, that very much says that there's something wrong in the Catholic Church. Something's not going well, right? Does that make sense? So St. Charles Borromeo, recognizing that maybe we need to fix some things, we need to right-size what the Catholic Church is doing, he decided to start some of these seminaries in Europe, these places where they would train priests, train men to be priests of the Catholic Church. Before that, there was some training that guys would go through to become a priest, but a lot of it was very haphazard. You were almost like an apprentice, right? You were sent to a parish. It's kind of like Star Wars, right? You have the master Jedi, and he takes on his apprentice. What do they call an apprentice in Star Wars? Apprentice is one of the words, but like a younger, anybody know? Starts with a P. Padawan, thank you. So you have your Padawan, then becomes your apprentice, you train. That's kind of how they did priesthood back then. So you would go to a church, it'd be like me getting a young man that I would just train to be a priest, right? And I trained him how to celebrate Mass and hear confessions, and that's how it would go. But the problem was, it didn't help these young men really develop in their prayer lives, nor did it help them to really understand what priesthood was about. And so St. Charles Borromeo, who we celebrate today, he really established the seminary system. Now, I loved my time in seminary. Anybody guess how long I was in seminary for? 8 years. So it was 4 years. And you guys listen, I love this. 4 years of college seminary, 4 years of major seminary. Here's the thing about seminary. And this would also be true if you are looking to become like a religious sister, you would have to join the novitiate, and you have to go through that. It is I don't know, imagine for a moment that you could live in a hallway, in your individual rooms, in this giant hallway, this dormitory, with like your best friends in the world, right? And you could hang out with them, play video games late into the night, pull pranks on one another, like all this fun stuff. But at the same time that all that's going on, and you're able to go out and play football and watch movies together, all these really awesome fun things, the foundation of your life is godliness and prayer. We would get up at Brute Seminary, we would wake up, and Mass was at 6:45 in the morning. How many of you guys got up before 6:45 this morning? Few people? How many of you would want to go to Mass at 6:45 in the morning? Yeah, exactly. But that structure was imperative to us in our training, that you got up, you got into church, so you could go to Mass, you could receive communion before you would go to your classes. And so every morning we would get up and we would do this. We would also have adoration on most days. We would get together and pray in union with morning prayer and evening prayer. And so what the seminary was, it was a wonderful place to grow as an individual, to forge lasting friendships. So, to put this in perspective, I have to share with you, one of my best friends in the world is Father Ben Seiberg, okay? He and I were classmates in seminary. We did all 8 years of seminary together, and of course he's a priest now down in Lawrenceburg, Indiana at St. Lawrence. This is how good of friends we are, or maybe not so much so. Just yesterday, so this is very recent, he calls me at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he says, Bedel, which is what he calls me, he doesn't call me Father Dan, Bedel, I am on my way to Terre Haute right now. Okay. I wasn't expecting him. I haven't invited him to come over. Like, in no way was I expecting Ben Seiberg to come to my house. But he calls me at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. He's like, I will be there in an hour. I'm like, okay, why? And he's like, because today's the election. And I need to watch it with my best friend. Like, I can't just watch this election by myself. So he drove the 3 hours from Lawrenceburg, Indiana to come to Terre Haute last minute, yesterday, so he watched the election. So I was up until 1 in the morning last night with Father Ben Seiberg so we could watch how the election was unfolding, and then this morning he drove back to Lawrenceburg. But those are the kinds of friendships that you develop in the seminary. These guys that you are just like brothers with these guys. And those friendships last into priesthood. I was telling some of our kids about the fact that we would pull these like pranks on each other. How many of you guys were there for that one when I was talking about the pranks? Yeah, a few of you guys. So this is a place where you're forming these friendships and you're developing in the Lord in this prayer life. And so one of my favorite pranks that was pulled on me, and I don't know if I've told this story or not, I am a very heavy sleeper. I sleep through the night. And there was this one time that my friends from college seminary, we were pulling pranks back and forth on each other, and it was really a lot of fun. They decided one night to duct tape my door shut. All right? So in the middle of the night, I was fast asleep. This is like 3 in the morning. They decided to duct tape my door so that I wouldn't be able to open it the next morning. Right? That was kind of the plan. The problem was my friends are idiots. And they don't know how duct tape and door frames and all that work. So they duct taped it and realized the duct tape wasn't actually touching the door. It was just the door well, like the door frame. They were just duct taping that. Plus, my door didn't swing outward into the duct tape. It swung into my room. And so the duct tape was doing absolutely nothing to like stop me from getting out of my room. But they duct taped my door frame, and I wake up in the middle of the night because they're kicking the bottom of my door to wake me up, right? So I wake up in the middle of the night, and I am like half out of it going to my door because it's 3 in the morning and I'm not fully awake. So from my perspective, I open the door up, and there's this thing in my door, and I don't know what it is. And you can imagine there are lights on in the hallway that are coming through the duct tape. And so, to me, it looked like someone had put up blinds in my door. And I was very confused by this. I was like, why are there blinds in my door? And so, being curious and it being 3 in the morning and not knowing what's going on, I decided to tap the duct tape. And tap, tap, tap. And I'm like, it's sticky. Why is it sticky? Why are blinds And of course, they're laughing on the other side. And I'm just like, this is so weird. And so I decide to try to peek through to see what's going on. So I kind of break through the duct tape. From their perspective, the next morning, they described it as watching a baby dinosaur being born, right? Because it was just like this, I was just looking through on either side, and they were laughing, and I was so tired. I didn't get it. I didn't know that it was a joke. I didn't get it was a prank. I just kind of closed the duct tape back up, went back to bed. They thought that I was angry with them because I didn't laugh at the joke, but that was not the case. I thought it was hilarious. But this is the kind of stuff that in seminary, it's formative. It's forming you into a good friend and a good human being. Now, I bring all this up because I think that a lot of times when we think about becoming a priest or becoming a religious, there's kind of a scary element to it, that we're afraid of what that's going to mean for us to join the priesthood or the religious life. And so we just kind of default to what we're used to, which is seeing married folk, right? Like when you go to the movies, a lot of times you see a romantic relationship take place. I mean, even if you watch Harry Potter, you've got Ron and Hermione, and you just see these things and you're just like, yeah, that's the path I'm going to take. But I want to highlight that both seminary life and formation towards the religious life, not only are they incredibly fun, I had a great time in seminary, I miss my life in seminary, but if that's what God is calling you to, it's really the only place that you're going to find fulfillment. It's really the only place that you're going to feel this connection to God, this connection to what you are called to, that you were given certain gifts and abilities that are meant for that life. And so, again, you guys, you're 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. You're not yet ready to make a call where you're going to college and what your career is going to be. I get that. I just hope that you're not scared of what priesthood can be, or scared of what religious life could be, or what that training would look like, because it's the farthest thing from being scary. In fact, I would say that even if you joined seminary or the religious life and didn't go through with it and became a priest, you didn't become a religious, you would still benefit from those places. That you would grow in friendship, you would grow in prayer, you would become more the person that God created you to be. So, with that in mind, we are celebrating Vocation Awareness Week. We are celebrating St. Charles Borromeo, who's the patron saint of seminarians. And I would just say, to end this, does anybody have any questions about seminary life or about religious life that I could answer at this time? And again, I know this isn't something you're going to be deciding in the next weeks or so, but something that hopefully in the next few years comes upon your mind. Yes? So where are seminary schools? They're located around the country, depending on the city. So we have a minor seminary in Indianapolis, which is where I went, Brute College Seminary. Then there's a major seminary. Minor means college, major means post-grad. It's called St. Meinrad, Indiana, and it's in the southern part of the state. There's Sacred Heart in Detroit. There is St. Mary's, Mount St. Mary's of the West in Cincinnati. There's Mount St. Mary's of the East in Baltimore. So they're all over the country, depending on where. There's Mundelein Seminary up in Chicago. Kennewick is in St. Louis. So there's a whole bunch of them around. It just depends on what diocese you sign up with. And then, of course, we have our Franciscans here in town. And so they would do a lot of their training, I think it would be in Louisville, where they have their headquarters. Oh, college. Oh, they go to California for the college seminary. Okay. So depending on what order you join or what, it's going to look different for each of those orders. But that's why it's good to start praying about it and exploring that, just so you can get some of that information. But good question. Any other questions about seminary life, religious life? Yes. Can I build a seminary school? Oh, can you fail? Can you fail? Yes. Yes, you can totally fail at seminary school. So there are those that fail for various reasons. Some fail academically, right? So they don't get good enough grades, and so they get kicked out of seminary. There are those that they they just prove that they're not ready to be a priest. So, for instance, a very classic one is, let's say that you're one of those college students and you're expected to be up and at Mass at 6:45 in the morning, right? And multiple times you don't go. You're missing Mass on a regular basis. You're missing adoration. You're missing the common prayer life. Well, if that keeps up over a long period of time, then the priest that's in charge, the rector, he would have a talk with you and say, look, like, if you can't make it to Mass in the morning, you can't make it to prayer, then how can we expect you as a priest to show up and celebrate Mass or to make your appointments? And so if that kept going on long enough, they would say, we can't ordain you as a priest, right? And so you can fail seminary, and you can also fail if you go towards religious life, and again, you don't meet their criteria, then you could. It's actually, I mean, to be honest with you, it's actually really hard to make it through all of seminary. Like the standards are very high for what it takes to become a priest. And so it's not something where we're just like, we'll just take anybody, who comes our way. It really is like, it keeps narrowing down the process so that you get the best of the best, I guess. Yeah. What are some of the standards? So some of it's a GPA, so some of it's your academics. You have to maintain a certain grade point average. Some of it is being able to relate well to others, being able to keep time, keep a good schedule. Some of it's a prayer life, if you're keeping a solid prayer life and praying on a regular basis. Some of the standards are even of a like psychological nature. You do a psychological evaluation. And there are those that, for that reason, they don't get into seminary. So there are a lot of standards that are maintained that, because of those, they can say, we're seeing that you're not prepared to be a leader at a parish. And so there's a lot of, and some of it's very vague and it's kind of hard to pin down, but once you're in the process, it becomes more clear. Yes? When you're in seminary? Yeah, so seminarians, how often can they go home and see their families? The rule for both the places I went was you could only go home once a month. So 1 weekend a month you were allowed to leave to go visit. And you had to get permission from the priest. So you had to let them know, and then they had to grant you permission. And so, and I think, when you're in college, I mean, that's actually not too bad, because most college students, right, they only come home on like the major holidays anyways. And so that it is something that it's about trying to keep you in that formative process, that you are away from your family and what's familiar, and you're trying to really become your own man and who God's creating you to be. But excellent question. Yes? Great question. So when I went to college, it was a regular college. It was Marian University in Indianapolis. And what happens is your seminary is like where you live, and it's where you pray. And there's formation that goes on there. Like you have lectures and talks that happen in the seminary. But then during the day, you go to classes with regular college students, right? So you're on Marian's campus, and you're walking around with people who have business majors or science majors, and you study philosophy, which is very interesting. I was not very big on philosophy, but I figured it out and I made it through. But you go to a regular college for your studies. Once you get to major seminary, though, at St. Meinrad, let's say, like it really is a seminary, and all of your studies are theology based, and so it's not really set up for other studies. It is really focused on becoming priests. But you can be. We had some lay people and lay women that could get degrees from St. Meinrad, but it would be in theology. So yes. Okay. Yes, in the back. Yeah, so just checking my time here. Yes, I majored in philosophy at Marian University, and I was working on a minor in business there as well. And then when I went to St. Meinrad, I got my master's. It's a cool degree name. you know how you can be like you have a master's in, science or a master's in education or whatever. Ours was called a Master's of Divinity, which I think is just such a cool title. So Master of Divinity. And then I also worked on another degree when I was at St. Meinrad through Rome, Italy. So I didn't actually go to Rome, but I was sending paperwork to Rome, and I had to write a 50-page paper, and I submitted it to Rome, and I got my bachelor's in theology, which they call an STB, a Sacred Theology Bachelor. So yeah, those kind of the degrees I got. Yes. Sports, yes, they do have sports. So at Marian, they have regular college sports. They just started their football team a few years back, and they've won a few national championships in their division. So I mean, they've done very, very well. But like at St. Meinrad, they have intramural sports. So we would put together a basketball team every year, and I was on the basketball team, and we would travel to other seminaries. So we would go up to Chicago, and we'd play at Mundelein. We'd go out to in Columbus, Ohio. It's the Josephinum. That's what it's called, the Josephinum. And so we'd have these huge tournaments where seminarians from across the country would come together and play basketball. And it was usually around winter time, like around Christmas, after Christmas. And we were horrible. St. Meinrad did not have a very good basketball team, probably because I was on it. And so we would go, and it was a ton of fun. Like, you got to meet other seminarians and talk about priesthood and all this fun stuff. And you got to play basketball with them. And I mean, you'd have crowds that would gather there, and you have your cheers and all this stuff. And we were the St. Meinrad Ravens. That was our mascot. So soccer was another big one. Lots of soccer being played in seminary, and I was horrible at soccer, but they knew I could run, so they put me in midfield, and I would play soccer in seminary, and I was awful at it. I can't kick with my left foot at all, but yeah, so they did have sports. Yes?
How long do you have to go to seminary to become a priest?
It depends. So if you come straight out of high school, it takes 8 years after high school to become a priest. If you go to college first, so let's say you go to like Purdue University and you get a degree in engineering, then it would be 6 years after Purdue, because you have to do 2 years of philosophy and 4 years of theology at that point to become a priest. So even if you've gone to college, it still is a lot of schooling that's necessary to become a priest. Yeah, and part of it too is because, I mean, when we ordain a priest, we want to make sure that they are being called by God to be a priest. And so 6 years of training, that seems like enough time to really kind of figure out, is that where they need to be? So, great questions. Okay, I'll just take a couple more if you have them, and then we'll call it. Yes? There is kind of an age group, so you can't apply for seminary until you're 18. So you have to wait till after high school to apply. And then usually once you hit like once you hit the mid 40s to 50, it gets really iffy, whether they'll accept you into seminary or not. It depends on the bishop, depends on the diocese and circumstances. So usually, yeah, if you're in your 20s, 30s, even 40s, like, you can apply for seminary, and usually you'll be accepted and not be put off because of your age. And part of that, it makes sense, right? Like, I mean, if you have like let's say a 60-year-old, that wants to become a priest, and it takes 6 years after college to become a priest. Well, now by the time that they're 66 and they're getting ordained, and you can retire priesthood at the age of 70, you're really looking at, you've trained them for 6 years, and they're going to be a priest for 4 years and then retire, right? Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so usually with the age range, it's really based on how much training are you going to get compared to how many years of priesthood can you really provide. And so each bishop has to make that decision on their own. But 18 is the youngest. Canonically, the youngest you can be to be a priest without dispensation is 25. But in the Archdiocese of Indianapolis and in a lot of places, you have to be 26 years old, because, again, you're 18 when you join. It takes 8 years of seminary, and so you do the math, and you're 26, which is how old I was when I got ordained. I was 26 years old, and seems like a while ago now. I'm 32. I'm going to be 33 this year. I'm getting old. I'm going to be the same age that Jesus was when he died. That's crazy. All right. All right, well, thank you guys, and I'm hoping to visit the classrooms more this week, and we can continue this discussion, but my main goal is really just to kind of demystify seminary and religious life and make it clear, like, you're not signing your names in blood if you join, and in fact, so many guys will join seminary and end up leaving after a year or two, knowing I'm not meant to be a priest, but every single one of them would say the same thing, that they're better because they joined seminary, spent time with other guys, developing friendships, developing a love of God, and now they can be a better husband and a better father because of their time in seminary. The same would be true of religious life. So please pray about it, think about it, and let's honor St. Charles Borromeo with that calling. Amen?